Don't edit this part out. This is the start. Third time.
Guys, I'm David Holmes with homely.com.au. We've got a ripping interview this afternoon. We've got John and Patrick who are coming to us live from Hobart, cold Hobart, and they're going to give us a bit of information about their market, how they work so well, both in collaboration and competition with each other, and give us a bit of an overview about how the last couple of months have looked for them. Now, hit the red button below. That's the subscribe button for YouTube. You can grab our interviews as they drop there, and also follow along on iTunes or Spotify. Just follow homely.com.au, and you'll be able to get a copy of our podcast and maybe even a copy of the guys' podcast called The Property Pod as well. Guys, thank you so much for giving us a bit of time today.
Absolute pleasure.
Glad to be here.
All right, tell us a bit about your journey now. We've had a bit of a laugh because we've had to start this podcast twice due to a slight technical issue, but we're good to go. So if this intro and this start isn't the slickest you've ever seen, it's because we've practiced it the 3 times. Patrick, give us a bit of a snapshot, mate.
All right, third time lucky. So started in 2006, I actually did. I grew up, well, now I wish I'd freaking practiced more.
Yeah,
so started in 2006, coming from a real estate family. So dad, mum, everyone's in it. So sort of just got into it by accident, but really fell in love with it very quickly. So basically worked in the real estate industry from a sales perspective my whole life. Haven't been as lucky as John, who's sort of done all aspects of it.
A little bit different. Yeah. Because I mean, I think both of us started in hospitality to begin with before moving into real estate. I mean, I was selling chickens and learning how to deep fry chips, and I can cook a mean chip. Let me promise you that.
Okay.
But mine started as, I was getting $30 cash cleaning mum and dad's office to start with when I was a teenager. And then when I got into real estate, I started at reception, did property management, strata management, and then moving then into sales and management, much more driven on that side of the business. So I know we were chatting a little bit before, is that both of us have ended up in the same position, but had very different roads getting there. It's not cool.
Yeah, like I've spent a lot of time working with developers and land subdivisions and sort of selling a lot of plan, where John's been more of the traditional mum and dad type property. So even though we do work in the same area, it's very rarely that we do actually end up competing against each other on the same listing, because the type of markets we focus on are different.
Yeah, which is kind of handy, like, because obviously we the thing is too, is we're friends first, so we grew up together in the same school, same class, and that kind of stuff, and been best mates our whole lives. And then what's been really handy, because even though we are technically working for different offices, we are in a competition. Generally speaking, if there's a sticking point, we'll call each other, because generally it seems to be that if I'm having a problem, Pat usually knows the answer and vice versa, or it's just kind of handy when you need to have a bit of a bitch about something. It's just like, oh no, I don't need an answer. I just go, like, cool, thanks, mate.
Nice.
Which I always think is quite funny, because when I talk to a lot of other agents, they're quite surprised when they find out how much we do share with each other. Like, we're both open books. Like, John knows exactly what my bottom dollar is each month, what he's doing in his office each month. We're never really worried about like keeping secrets, I guess. Like, a lot of agencies like to, talk a big talk and talk about how well they're going. But we're pretty raw with each other, and I just think it is that friends aspect first.
I would imagine in a market the size of your market, transparency is pretty much everything. You'll be working, there'd be a lot of crossover with buyers, and you'd see a lot of the same people across each other's markets. So I think that's pretty healthy. Tell us a bit about the story. John, you're from First National, which is obviously a quality and a traditional brand across Australia. And Patrick, you're with 414 Real Estate. So I might describe your story first on the 414. Where did that come about? What's the number significant?
Yeah, sure. So my dad was part of one of Hobart's, or Tasmania's largest real estate firms for 30 years. And he just got to that point where he was sick of being sort of working for somebody else, decided just to come back to Glenorchy, where my grandfather actually used to run an agency. And the shop we rented was actually 414 Main Road, Glenorchy. So it's not really a creative name at all. We were just like, street address, real estate on the end, let's do this shit. And we spent half our life explaining what the name is, but hey, it's a talking point, and when people hear it, they don't tend to forget it, because it is a little bit weird and unique, I guess. So it's
I guess they asked. Now we know. That's good.
Yeah. We can tick that up and move on.
Yeah, and First National, John, you've been part of was your father part of First National? Because you said 30 years he's been in the game.
Yeah, that's right. So our office has been part of, we're actually one of the oldest First National offices in the network, interesting enough, so plus 30 years. And that was, Dad had bought into that First National business about 96 and 98. And then it wasn't until 2002 where it morphed and he and Mum bought out, or Chris and Julie bought out their business partner, and then changed it from Derwent First National to McGregor First National. So that's carried on our family's name since. And I suppose where we've found the benefit of that is for anyone who's familiar with the First National network, it is, it's not a franchise, it's a membership. So in that, we've been able to maintain our sense of identity without independence, without that pressure of a franchise dictating what you want to do. But for us, it's really important to us. We love the camaraderie of this industry. And I think it's on the back of Mum and Dad's experience where I suppose then we've brought that same value to our friendship in the way that we do business, because you look at the volume of stock that is in our marketplace, there's more than enough properties for both of us to sell and be successful. So it just seems unnecessary to be at each other's throats. Why not just support each other and have great businesses? Because in the end, it only enables us to make more money and be more successful.
Sadly, in our industry, there's a lot of times where you see that's not the case. People are unable to sort of work with each other. There's a lot of dog-eat-dog stuff, and unfortunately, it's always been like that, and potentially it always will be like that to a point. But I love the fact that you guys you've grown up together, and you've been able to maintain that friendship and continue working together, and clearly have a really an abundance mindset. You've said a number of times there's enough for everybody, and I like that. And there's anyone else? Just enough for the two of you guys. Yeah, nice. Okay, but it's good, and you celebrate the wins, and also take the losses on the chin too, which is really cool. So, how does that collaboration sometimes work? If you're going for a really big one, I'm interested to see how that might work. If you're both going for the appraisal, I mean, it's got to be a bitter coffee that you buy the other bloke at the end of that.
Well, we've got a great example because Pat won a really good, what was it, with Centacare, a really massive project.
Yeah, so I won a fairly large contract that went out to tender to half of Hobart, I think, and I was lucky enough to secure it. And John was one of the ones that I secured it against.
Yeah.
So I think the way it works is I must owe him about 150, 160 copies at this point. So I don't think he's bought a copy for a long period.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing was, though, is that, it is fair game. We were sharing each other about what were our specific strategies, because both of our businesses, we attacked it from two very different angles. And in this case, Pat's business they saw the value and the experience that he could bring in different elements that I couldn't. And so, it sucks because obviously in your own self, you're like, I would love to have that money coming through our business, but I'd rather, much rather see Pat win that business, and then we, challenge each other on those presentations to make sure that then we're 10 times better than the others, and then lose it on that basis than someone else that we don't know. So that was probably the best example, I reckon, where it's happened.
Yeah, there's been plenty along the way though, where I remember one occasion I'm halfway through doing my appraisal pitch, and there's been a knock on the door from a vendor, and John's at the other side of the door, and the vendor's like, "What are you doing here, John?" And he's like, "I'm here for an appraisal." He's like, "You're booked in for tomorrow. You're not even here for today, mate." And so there's been occasions where John has rocked up on a wrong day, halfway through my pitch, and it's just a bit of fun. And it's like, "Come in, John. Let's
we're here now."
Yeah, right.
We'll share the listing.
So look, I think when it boils down to it, we both have the same approach. We're not upset when the other person wins a listing. We're just glad that it's the other family business that we get along so well with that's won the job over us. Exactly. So that's our end goal, I guess, at the end of the day.
Okay. So let's have a chat about the last couple of months. Obviously, you started just before GFC, is that right, Patrick? I think so. You sort of worked through that. Yep. Would have seen a fair few things there that you had to counteract. These last couple of months, what sort of strategies have you put in place to safeguard the business and some of the things that you might have done a little bit differently? I know we had a bit of a chat off screen there a couple of minutes ago, and I like some of the ideas that you'd had, but what's some of the efficiencies that you've been able to build in the business over the last couple of months?
I think the first thing that I really noticed differently about this versus GFC or other examples is that there's not actually pressure to sell a house at the moment. Because there's not pressure coming from any banks, so to speak, with mortgage repossessions or anything. The type of vendor that you're dealing with is a different type of vendor to what we experienced in GFC. Back then, we were dealing with a lot of vendors that had to sell and didn't have the choice. But at the moment, with banks freezing mortgages for upwards of 6 months, that pressure's not there. So the sales have dropped off, but we've had to be creative on how we've found them in other ways.
Yeah.
So for us at 414, and John and I share nearly everything when it comes to tech ideas. It's just been really about giving as much as we possibly can to a potential buyer, so that if there's an option to load something online, we load it up. So I guess an example of that is Matterport scans. So we've been doing those, which I'm assuming a lot of people in the last 3 months have found out exist in the marketplace and become quite popular from what I can tell. So John and I use them on everything. Obviously everyone loads floor plans. We load as many photos as we can, video tours. Like literally, if you can load a file to the internet, which helps the purchaser, then we're basically loading it at the moment to give that exposure. And we're doing it from rentals and sales, because my wife runs our sales department, and she's always telling, on my rental department, and she's always telling me that rentals are the poor cousins of sales. So the first thing that we did when COVID hit is we made it an even playing field. Every property, if it's for sale or rent, it gets the same exposure online, because everyone's challenging on how they get through this. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided as much as we could.
And I think the perception of value to your clients, vendors, and investors is huge, because they can see the information across so many different platforms now. And so it's an easy way of adding value very, very quickly. And also for buyers, the access to information is so important. So the easier that we can make it for them, the better. Sorry, John.
And a good, to expand on your point there, and I think that's a really good thing for young agents. Like, we're obviously early 30s, but is to lean into technology. Not doesn't mean that it's detracting away from your skill or your ability, but it's enhancing, enabling a better quality of conversation. So a lot of the frustration I'd imagine a lot of buyers can see is that they make an inquiry, don't get a response for 24 hours, and they'll just ask simply what the rents are. So another thing that we've implemented as well is once an email inquiry comes in, the person's automatically getting a response back within the 30 seconds. It's done automatically. And within that, then there's a link to a webbook where then it just breaks down a lot of extra information. You download the contract, download the title, download the, it's got rates, water, things that are in the area. So hopefully 90% of the stuff that a person is generally going to ask for is covered. So by the time we get on the phone, we're right in there engaged with either specifically, what they are, what they need, and obviously booking appointments. So hopefully then you utilising technology that once you finally get to the phone, you're having a quality conversation rather than just, the analogy I use is that sometimes, people walk through a car yard and kick the tyre, and they don't really know why they're kicking a tyre. They're just kicking it because someone said that seems to be something you should do. I think sometimes people go, oh, what are the rates on the property? Well, no one really knows why they're asking it. It's just, they don't know what else to ask. They'll ask a simple question. So why not give them all that stuff so you can get to what's important to them? And I think then utilising all these technologies has been really useful in this market.
And I think we chose to do that as well to try to follow government guidelines. So don't leave the house unless you absolutely have to. So if we can give everyone the information up front, then hopefully the people that are committing to come and look at a property are actually coming to look at it because they are genuinely interested in it, and we're not just dealing with another time waster that thinks they want to look at it.
And that's a point, because the only real tool that was eliminated for us in our market was open for inspections. So obviously that completely eliminates the ability to have 20, 30 people walk through your open home. Obviously that's great if they're there. So if all of a sudden we're having to invest a lot more of our clients' time by one after private inspections, which is perfectly fine, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But the thing is, we can't obviously spend 40, 50 hours getting 40 people through. So it's essential then that we try and eliminate, bad word, but I think we all understand where we're coming from here, or qualifying, so that we can maximise the use of our time, the purchaser's time, and then obviously not waste our vendors as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I like your tyre kicker analogy too. I remember going to buy a car off someone once and just popping the bonnet. I have no idea what I was looking for, but I took confidence. I took confidence that there was a motor there, so it's important.
You're making a bunch of dad noises like, oh yeah, oh that one, yep.
Exactly. Tell us about your podcast, guys. You run a podcast. Is it a weekly thing, a monthly? It's called the Property Pod. What do you guys discuss? What's your message? Why did this come about?
Well, that started from my idea. I wanted to do a podcast about anything for ages, and I bought a microphone and never used it. And see, that's what happens. I'll come up with ideas, but Pat's the first to implement it because you're just sick of waiting for me to do it.
So we used to meet, obviously when we used to compete against listings and stuff, we'd shout each other coffee, and that turned into a weekly coffee meeting. Every Thursday morning we'd catch up at the local coffee shop and sit down and we'd talk about our day and what's happened and hold each other accountable to a degree as to what we've been doing. And as a result, John started talking about this podcast, and I'm like, well, what we talk about every Thursday morning over coffee, why don't we talk about it on microphones? But John only had the one microphone, and I'm a bit of a person that if I decide to do something, we do it like that. So I went out and bought the freaking biggest podcast kit you could ever buy, 4 microphones, big mixing board, like the whole shebang, like tiles to make the sound better in the room. And I set it all up, and I'm like, right, John, we got the gear, now let's figure out how to do one. So, we fast discovered, because we are competing agencies, we didn't want to really push one agenda over the other, say a McGregor agenda or a 414 agenda. So we actually brought in a third person, which is another school friend of ours, Aaron, who's actually the photographer that does a lot of our work for both of our agencies. And so Aaron acts like a mediator for the actual podcast. So he's the host of the show, and John and I are there to sort of answer the questions, I guess.
So is it buyer focused, or is it agent focused, or seller focused? What's
whatever we can freaking think of to talk about for half an hour. One episode was about the Star Wars movie that came out the night before. It's designed to help, I guess, people that don't understand the property market. Like, we both work with a lot of first-time buyers, and the amount of times we've heard stories where an agent has pushed a piece of paper across the table to a buyer or a vendor and said, sign here, and they don't know what they're signing, is actually really scary. So that was something that John and I hear so often, and something we wanted to try and help eliminate. So a lot of our episodes are based about trying to help people understand the process, what's involved in selling your house, how do you do marketing, what should an agent be asking for marketing, and we might do an episode about like helping a buyer understand how to buy their first home and the steps involved. Sometimes we get guests in, so we've had brokers in, we've had building inspectors in, we've had property stylists. So
has it won you any business? Has it picked up any listings, or got new property management? That might not be your ultimate aim, but has it done that?
Yeah, we've actually had a couple of new property managements, and one guy actually then at a later date featured as a guest from an investor perspective, came on the podcast. Blake came on and had a good old chat to us. So it's definitely helped us educate buyers. We've had what started off as very much a Hobart-based podcast has actually grown into an Australia-wide podcast. And last week, John had someone email him from Queensland actually and wanted to buy here in Latana and doing all his research. And so we've used that to help him further his case here. So it's actually amazed us how far the podcast has reached over recent times. And sure, we've all got great ideas, and I think it's a really good aspect to be able to just provide information to people and not expect anything from it.
Yeah, I think it's encouraging, isn't it? You know, you find that there's no sort of dumb question. A lot of people are looking for the same information. Doesn't matter where in Australia or perhaps even the world you are. You know, you've got some relevant information there. That's great.
Yeah. And I think there's so many agents out there that could do this and very easy. Like we went full pelt and went right off with a big giant setup, but you can do it with a microphone on your iPhone and just upload your information. And I think the more you give, it just comes back and returns to you later down the track.
And a really simple way, if any of the guys listening are curious about starting it, you know, all you can do is you can come up with 20 common questions that you get asked almost on a weekly basis. And then one little episode is just answering 3 of those questions. And then you've got 10 minutes worth of content and boom, you're done. You know, so it doesn't have to be one like we've done, obviously, because this is what we're passionate about, to go to this extreme. But coming up with just a simple concept like that doesn't cost you anything. I mean, one of the biggest things, I suppose, that were important for us, though, if you are producing that, and this is a little bit different, obviously, because we're getting interviewed, but is just ensure the sound quality is good, as best as you can, you know, because it's that, and probably overstepping what you thought this interview would be, but that's, you know, if it's just handy to have a half decent microphone so that when you do produce your content, it's okay to listen to and doesn't, you know, hurt people's ears, I suppose.
I agree. We do a lot of in-room auctions, and one of the pet frustrations I think people watching on is just the sound can be quite average, especially when in an empty room. You might only have a few buyers there, and it just sounds like an empty room. Whereas if you just invest a small amount of money in a decent microphone, the sound is it can make a lot of difference and make it a much more pleasurable experience for those watching. Guys, let's get off the podcast. One thing that we talked about before that I wanted to touch on was one way in which you've been qualifying your buyers throughout this case. I like the idea that you've got a checklist, and I'd love to get a bit of some information around that, and also some of the questions that you're asking to qualify people further, and what you're surprised that people are actually happy to answer.
Well, the first started well over a year ago. I trialled the idea of enabling purchasers to book their own inspection times, and had very little uptake. And after having a few conversations, they're quite nervous about doing it on a purchase, on a buying a property. But on rentals, they found it no trouble. For whatever reason, I don't know. So I canned that for a while. Then once the virus hit out, and we were obviously limited on capacity, reintroduced it. So what it enabled people to do then is that on a vacant property inspections, we can lock in available times for people to book it. And rather than having a back and forth between me, they just get the, they send the inquiry, it automatically gets a response back, and then in 2 clicks they can book an inspection, they're booked in. So, and then I showed Pat the tech that I was using, and then he expanded it even further, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, so I took John's idea, which was this calendar booking program, which Calendly?
Calendly.
Calendly? Yep, Calendly.
That's all we're using. It's nothing special. Anyone can buy it.
Not expensive.
And so what we did was, excuse me, we looked at what John was doing, and I loved it. And I thought, why don't I then add questions and get information from people? So before I've even met them, I get to a bit of a story. So we started asking questions like, based around COVID to begin with. So, you
can customize all the questions that you ask.
Yeah. So when we first started using it was when so many people were coming back from overseas. So there's questions like, have you been overseas in the last 14 days? Have you tested positive for COVID-19? Do you agree not to touch anything during the property inspection so that we can limit impact on our properties? And from there, we started thinking, well, people are really happy to answer these questions. Why not ask them, are you pre-approved for finance? Do you have a house to sell? Have you had an appraisal done? And it's amazing. Everyone just ticks yes, no, no, yes. And from that, you wake up in the morning, you've had a couple of inspections booked overnight that you had nothing to do with, it just ended up in your diary. And you've got all this wealth of information about the buyer you're meeting before you've even actually picked up the phone and had a conversation with them. So yeah, it's definitely something that has only happened because of COVID-19 that I can't imagine I'll stop using once this is all done. It's just streamlined the process really effectively.
And the great thing is from the consumer's perspective is that, you do get those text messages and emails at 11:31 p.m. and stuff, because that's just when people might have their time. And instantly they can already start booking their day without having to waiting for us to return their calls at 10 a.m. and having these, conversations. So it worked exceptionally well. The great thing is too, when you're integrating it with your clients and your vendors, I mean, you can lock in when times are available. So you don't have to, you still have control over your diary, but you're just enabling people to, there's booking systems used all around the place. It's like, why not use it for real estate? So it's been phenomenal integrating that to the businesses.
But it has actually made your business more efficient, is that right?
100%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, very efficient.
And do you find that there's more buy-in from someone who's actually gone to the effort of actually locking in a time? They're actually more committed because they believe they're using your time now?
I think personally, you still have to do the normal checks. So, like as part of my routine, I'll always do a text message in the mornings while the forward appointments. Just hey, just wanted to double check if this is still okay. So I think it's really important that that you still do those follow-ups in the morning to ensure that your days no one's going to be cancelling on you. Because in reality, I've found that there's actually if people have booked it online, they're less likely to reach out and tell you they've cancelled. But it does have a really simple function that they can just cancel the appointment anyway and you get notified. So
right.
I think it's important not to, again, the challenge, I suppose the seductiveness of technology is that you no longer have to have a phone conversation. All it is that it's enhancing that ability to build that relationship. So you still want to then, you can call them up and say, hey, thank you for booking the inspection. Do you have any questions? Great to see you then. Or do a text message or still have that communication with the client. Otherwise, you're relying on technology too heavy and just taking out the human element, which is, to me, what technology is designed to enhance.
Yeah, it's more of a conversation starter as opposed to a conversation replacer. With some of the guys that we've spoken to, some of the agents we've spoken to, they've found that the qualifying has been, some have really appreciated this time because they're actually feeling as though they're qualifying their buyers and the inspections more heavily. Others have found that they are getting those tire kickers still. People are just happy to tick and flick all the boxes, yes, 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 and sort of come through, which can be a little bit frustrating. Is there a bit of a tipping point around the information that you can and can't ask? I mean, can you ask, are you approved for finance? And then to that end, what is your level of approval? I mean, where do you go with this and what's too much information to ask?
Well, for me, I've been doing it in a two-part thing. So I've been pretty limited with the information before the inspection, but after the inspection, I've just been sending a simple Google form sheet, which is like a questionnaire at the end, like a survey almost. And I've started doing that because the amount of times you buy something online, the next day you get requested to, review the product that you bought. I was like, well, why can't we review the house that we looked at? And inside that, I've actually dived into a lot more detail. Like if they've said, no, the house isn't for us, then I've started asking all those qualifying questions, like how much are you pre-approved for? And 9 out of 10 people actually are willing to give the information if you ask for it. I think most people think if you're asking for it, you're doing that to help them, not to, just get intrusive on them. I think they genuinely believe that if you're taking the time to, send this follow-up information and ask these follow-up questions, that you're doing it because you want to try to help them achieve their goals. And I'm a pretty laid-back agent, so as you can see, I'm not a suit and tie agent. So I think once people have met me as well, they're not too stressed about providing stuff to me because they know that I'm pretty easy to deal with.
It's got to be another great angle, though, of providing quality information to your vendors as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. And like I was like, if I get 20% of the people fill out the survey after the property's finished, I'll be happy. But I've actually found that it's been a lot higher. It's been probably closer to 80%. And actually, if I would ring someone and say, oh, what did you think of the house? Oh, I don't like it. Oh, what do you think it's worth? Oh, yeah, what you're advertising online is right, because they're too scared to actually tell you what they honestly think, because they don't want to offend the vendor that they think that it's, 50 grand too dear or whatever it might be. But when they seem to fill out these forms online, they seem a lot more willing to tell the truth, I think, because, it's 300,000. Like if they're happy to type it into a computer, but they're not necessarily happy to tell you over the phone.
And so they don't respond to the feedback call, but they're happy to put it in a computer because they're not sure whether they'll actually reach the human who actually delivers the information, etc.
Maybe that's exactly what it is. I can't answer as to why that people are more happy to do it, but you only have to look at Facebook comments. People will vent absolutely everything on a blog post and not be afraid to say what they're truly thinking. Yet if you ask them in person, they won't say it. So sort of thought the same theory around my surveys I have about properties is that, oh, well, let's see how this rolls. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, fantastic. And it's actually worked. But it also might be work because people have so much time on their hands at the moment and they are sitting at home doing nothing. So it might change as time goes on.
Well, to balance back to your question too, because you said, look, what's appropriate or not. I think you've got to think of it at the stage because you can ask more once you've invested more in a person, so they're more willing to give. So
trust and rapport. Yeah,
exactly. So in those initial stages, from an agent's perspective, if you're looking to help a client, what do you really need to know? Well, a few questions is enough. Do they need to sell? Are they pre-approved for finance? How soon do they need to buy? So that's enough for you to go by. And then once you've in that initial inquiry stage for the book report, great. Then you've had the conversation. Then you can get in further once you've built a bit more trust. So you never ask for too much up front because people are more inclined to back off. But a couple of nice little questions at the end. You've got the capacity to ask for appraisal. You can refer them from a finance broker, or the urgency depending upon their time frame. And usually that's enough to be able to carry that relationship forward.
All right, for somebody who's watching along on the vlog today and they've decided that they want to use that Calendly program, how hard is it? Easy to say, harder to say than it is to use by the sounds of it. Is it relatively simple to set that up and customize your own form and your questions? So would people be able to set this up fairly swiftly?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a tech head, so obviously I found it quite easy, but I was basically copying John's. John gave me access to his calendar and I just looked at what he did, and it's very simple. And you can even go as far as adding Zoom appointments or Google Meet appointments.
What's that?
And obviously everyone, that's a trending word at the moment, is let's do a Zoom meeting. Well, you can actually have that functionality built into it that it actually creates the meeting and everything for you the moment they book the inspection. So it's as powerful as you want it to be, or as simple as you want it to be, which I really like.
And the thing is too, is that what happens is you set it up, it integrates to your Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, so it automatically connects with all your existing appointments. So then you're building it side by side. So
not double handling anything, which is what I really like. So I can block out a 2-hour window for homeschooling with my kid on a Wednesday morning, and then that time slot's not available in the calendar program to book an inspection. So
nice.
It works well for us. And
in asking the buyers, those who've used it, they've loved it. So it's like, oh, it's great. And then another way we've been able to enhance it too is then once you've got a contract going and you might have, follow-up or pre-settlement appointments, or they might need to, they want to do a measure up. I'll just say, hey, look, here's your exclusive use for this for you. No one has access to this, and you're free to use it as much as you want. And I've never had anyone abuse it, but it just means then I've had a couple of clients, and during the contract period, where they've just booked a time to do a carpet measure up, and it's they've had a really good experience with it. So It's just a nice little enhancement that I guess, no one's ever really thought to integrate.
And potentially you could be a little bit cunning with it too. Every time that you were responsible for homeschooling the child, you could actually book in an appointment and make sure that the wife was then shirked those responsibilities. I wouldn't do that, but I was asking for a friend would be my answer.
I have said to Abby, if you need me, book on my time.
Yeah. Nice, book me in a spot. Guys, lastly, a bit of a nice segue. We were talking about just a couple of seconds ago how people are willing to put comments on a survey form or on a Google form, but they're often unwilling to have that conversation in person. We do see that on the internet with Facebook and forums, etc. And Patrick, I think in your words a couple of seconds ago before we started, you said, I've fallen a little bit in love with the Homely site in just answering those questions, suburb reviews, and answering those questions. So, mate, tell us about what you've sort of found on there, because from time to time, you do get someone putting in a bit of a strange review or something that's a little bit rough around a suburb that they mightn't have liked. But what have you seen in there?
Basically, for me, I don't visit a lot of portals, so to speak, because I use a CRM, so we pump all our properties out to the different portals. However, last week I did find myself searching through Homely and using their question and answer page, which turned out to be quite fun and actually enjoyable. It's been really interesting to see the vast array of different questions people ask. So I had one person that was asking, was Bridgewater a good area to develop in? And someone had written a really smart-ass comment because the suburb's known as a little bit of a rougher area. But it's not true. It's changed so much in the last few years. And I was able to actually write a rebuttal question that actually provided the correct information.
And with a good development you've been working on.
Yeah, so... but then there's been some really funny questions hidden in there as well, like when's the next bingo night in Montrose? So, look, I think it's a great little feature actually that I didn't realise that was part of Homely. So it's been fun sort of working through the questions and just having a bit of an enjoyment answering them in these times when it's been a bit quieter.
Yeah, and I found one of the directions it seems that Homely's taking that I quite like is that it is the sense of a property community. So it sort of reminded me of a Reddit forum rather than just every other website, which is just a cold products pusher. And the way they so it's just a very different sense to the way that people could engage with real estate, which I think is really exciting because no one seems to be doing it.
I agree with you. Guys, thank you for giving us a bit of time today and investing. We look forward to having a couple of listens to your podcast as well, the Property Pod. But we really appreciate you giving us a little bit of time today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys. All right, we'll see you again.
Take care.